Right, today I'm going to quickly talk about my R380 gearbox on my Land Rover. I've got fitted a Ashcroft Stumpy because I've got it in my Series 2A with an R380 box, just because I do quite a lot of driving up and down the motorway, and having a better gearbox than the old standard was just, a better decision. So that's what I've got fitted. But what I have noticed is the gearbox gets rather hot. So I ended up purchasing one of these, which is a genuine part Land Rover part number Ftc-2687. Now, they're not extremely rare, but they're not cheap to come across either. But saying that, there was one on eBay recently that went for 99p. Because whoever listed it didn't write the description correctly and the proper numbers for it. So I don't think too many people saw that, but usually these are going for quite a bit. I paid for this 125 quid, I think, plus postage from a guy up in Scotland somewhere. Lockerbie, that was it. It came with all the pipes and the oil cooler, which I'm not going to use because I'm going to fit all my own stuff. So I was more interested in this, and it was a good buy because it was new, genuine. Well, not new, but hadn't been used for a long time and just been sat there. And he assured me that it was all in good condition because he took it apart himself before putting it back. And this was on a military V8, not a 300, 200 TDI. So, but I've modified this now and done some bits and bobs. So I'm going to show you what I've done and give you a layout of bits that I've modified, bits that I found that was very hard to get off in the first place. So one of the issues regarding all this, forget that for a second, one of the issues when I first got it was trying to strip it down. I could not get this out, and not because it was gunked up with crap and never been serviced. It was just very hard to remove, because once these parts are all in here like this, and then once that's in there and that's all compressed down, there's no way of trying to get this cover out. And the only way to do that was for this pin to push the cover out without the circlip being on. So the only way I thought I could get this, and I did try many ways trying to pick bits of stuff to flip this out, but that wasn't going to happen because there's no little notch here to allow you to prise. So I come up with the solution is I'll take it off, I'll put a bit of a blowtorch on it and heat it up, and that will pop out, which it did. But it popped out with great pressure, which nearly popped the pin out as well, which I don't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing to do that. But luckily I didn't pop the pin out, because inside here is wax and that, and it's all set at a set temperature. I don't know a lot about it. I could do some research, but never bothered because it worked. And I'm more interested in getting all this built up so I can get it all back on. But into a description of things that I've done. So I drilled the top to 1/8 BSP or MPT, but I was going to drill it to 1/8 BSP because I was going to put a bend on it. I noticed that when doing that, I got rather close to the plug that they put in, because I'm guessing everything is drilled on the machinery when doing these all goes down that way. So the plug that they put in got rather close to the 1/8 BSP. And then when I was putting my tap in to create the thread, it pulled to bung out. So which left me with a problem. I either need to go bigger from 1/8, or I need to find an alternative version which is very close to the 1/8. So what I ended up doing was putting the 7/16 UNF in and tapping that down into it that way, and then putting an angle 90 on, which has got the 1/8 BSP thread. So that's a 7/16 UNF at that end. This end is a 1/8 BSP. That allowed me to put the elbow on to allow me to put the pressure gauge fitting on, which we'll talk about in a minute. Then I tapped a 1/8 MPT down this way to get the temperature probe in. On some of these I've noticed they put like some kind of Y fitting that branches out, and from that branching out they put a pressure and a temperature. I was thinking you're never going to get a true reading, which I'm guessing you don't need to have a true reading. A couple of degrees either side isn't going to be too much of a problem. But as the oil's flowing through, and the oil will flow in this way, come out that way, once the thermostat kicks in at its set temperature, which if you look at here, does actually show it operates at 74 degrees. So this is the operating temperature of what the gearbox should be operating at. So what I thought is that if we have an elbow up here and it's going off, we're never going to get, the pressure isn't a problem because the pressure is always going to be there, but the oil's never going to get a true reading, because once the oil's stuck up there, it's going to take time for that oil to heat up, so you get the real reading. So I thought, right, we'll get rid of that. We'll put the single one here, and then what we'll do is we will tap in this way. And if you look, we now get a real true reading, because these gauges from SPA, dual gauges, these sensors, when I was speaking to Nigel, who's their technician there, which I've done another video elsewhere on my YouTube listings on the SPA gauges, these are really sensitive. So what he was saying is that the brass bit, which has got the parting that measures your temperature, he said is so thin that by touching it with your hand or your fingertips, the heat generated just from your fingertips will create a reading on your gauge. That's how good and how accurate the gauges are. And this is probably why these are the best part of 36 odd quid each, compared to a lot of gauges out there that are genuine part gauges that are quite thick. You look at the Land Rover ones, they want the most accurate in the first place anyway. But so I decided to drill in that way and create a very precise, where I can get a real true reading all the time. Because like I was saying, I was doing a lot of overland driving and I'm pulling a lot of weight. I would like to have a more true reading. So that's why I've gone that way and that way. And I thought I'd show you what I've actually done here. So going to the pressure gauge. This is the pressure gauge that SPA provide, which is a really nice gauge. I've fitted these all on, so these aren't going to come off now. I'll put a tiny bit of low grade Loctite just on the very end threads here, not all the way down, so then it seals it guaranteed. Because you know what Land Rovers are like, everything has a leak. Even when you do them new, they still have a leak, but that's Land Rovers for you. So that's that. It's got the nice connector on the end, all push fit, none of this thread that you screw on, and these are really nice bits of kit that Race Tech do, but they're pricey. But yeah, basically that was it. I haven't got the bolts because they're in the gearbox, so they didn't get mixed up. And that was it. The other bit that I've modified, which I was talking about earlier on, is this bit. So what I've done is, on the original ones, they had a little tiny drill mark, which was concaved, to allow for that bit there to sit in like that. So if you see like that, that sits in like that, and then that pin pushes outwards. So what I thought of doing was I'll drill that out, I'll tap that. I was going to tap it with a M3, but then I thought, it's a bit thin, isn't it? And then I tapped it with, decided to possibly tap it with an M4. But then working out the thickness and all that, I was only going halfway through, and then you was only getting maybe 2-3 threads before you had to stop. So I was like, what are we going to do? So I decided I'd drill all the way through, re-tap it, then use a super high strength Loctite, which I don't use Loctite, I use another brand of bolt stud glue adhesive, which I've used before, which is like a super grade. We'd say it now. They don't come off very easy, and I've made the mistake once of doing it on an M4 and an M3 because I didn't have anything, and I wasn't thinking at the time, and I just put a tiny bit on. I sheared the damn nut top off because it was that. That's how tight they are. So I've used it because I don't want this to ever come off again. And I'm only wanting it to be able to lever and wiggle it out. So basically I've drilled through an M5. Then you can see, put a hole so the pin can sit back in. So the idea now will be, I'm not going to fit all of this because I need to oil this up first before fitting it all up, so it has a bit of lubrication in there. But if we was to put that in like that, then what we would have is the circlip, which again, if you're doing a lot of overlanding, wading through water, I would definitely recommend to put a tiny bit of silicone in here just to stop any possible ingress of muck and dirt. Plus, these don't usually ever fail, but if it ever did, I would have to take all this off to get to this, or I'd have to heat it up to allow that to pop out, which is risky because what happened with that nearly. So I just thought having that on like that would be so much better. Now what I can do is, all I've got to do is wiggle it and it comes out, and that will be so much easier to do. And basically that's it. You know what these are the seals that go onto here, because on the normal ones these are just shafted that way, there's just a pipe that goes down, which now I could put a temperature into them. So if you just wait 1 second. Before I get my box of other bits that I've got, I can show you some of the other stuff, what I was talking about. So going back to the bit in there, this is what I was talking about. So when I started to tap it, it pulled out, and that's basically sleeved in as a blocker for all the machining that they do to create all the passages. So drill goes this way, precisely goes down to create there, and then the two holes go that way. Because if you look in there, you can see the actual drill markings where it's gone into a point. But yeah, that was that bit that came out that required me to come up with a different way to do that. Now, this is what I was originally on about. So this is what gets fitted standard. And again, they've done the same thing there. They've got a tap block to block the end up because they've drilled it out. And I'm guessing that's how it would have been. But you could do something similar. So as this is you're in and you're out, and it doesn't really matter where you was to tap here, you could actually put a tap through there, drill it, tap it, and put a sensor probe going through there. If you just wanted to know what your temperature was of a gearbox without having the bio like this. The reason for buying this is because you want to control, monitor the temperature properly and have a thermostat, because they do some other, Ashcroft do one, there's a few companies out there. There's a gearbox company down Coventry way. They've made their own and all that, but none of them are thermostatic controlled, which if you're in a hot country, Africa, Spain, where it's constantly hot, which it's not always hot, they're not very good. And I don't know a lot about them. It's just bits that I've read, but really, for provinces that have winters and springs and summers, and one day it's hot, next day it's not, the thermostat controlled ones are the proper tool to have. I wouldn't be going with these other stuff, because in long term, from what I've read, they will cause problems. How much and how long it would take, I don't know. I'm only going by what people have said and forums and people have done these on a regular basis and their opinion. But yes, if you was to drill in there, put a 1/8 MPT or BSP or whatever gauge you've got, you could put a temperature probe in there, or you could put a temperature switch. So you could have a light that comes on to tell you that it's getting hot. Also, on my LT230, I've put the square box cover on, which has got the fins on to help cool, because you have to remember, if the gearbox is getting hot and it's all metal and bits of alley, and then that's being transferred through to your LT230 casing, that's going to get hot. So all them things, this contributes to a lot of stuff and cooling. Another thing I read last night, which was interesting, is some people have shortened the pipes on these. So they're very short, they go underneath an area of the seat, because you know Land Rovers, they get a lot of air everywhere. You could possibly put these under the seats, but usually these was fitted up into the front end, had a long metal pipe with rubber end hoses, and that was sufficient enough to do what the job was intended to do. My plan is to run up the front, because I couldn't put it under the seat boxes or work like that, because I've got special cover plates that encase all the underneath of the Land Rover to protect all the insides from getting dirty and shitty from the lengths of travel that I do. And that's basically about it. I also have done this, and I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. So let me just put some of this back, tidy it all up. Always good to have your stuff in order, so you know where everything is. So if I take out all the bits that I don't need, I put all the bits back in. So that's like that. You don't want to get stuff mixed up. now I've remembered, I've actually changed my bolts, but they're the bolts for here. They would obviously go the other way, but yeah, I've put different bolts on. Right, now going to this, put that down there. I've gone with quick connectors. Why I've done this, I don't know. I just, something I like. I can get hold of these nice and cheap, not really costing me a lot of money. So, and I mean getting quite cheap for a friend. So what my plan was to, if I was up at the front end where I'm going to have the oil coiler, which I'm most likely going to be buying a Ali Sport one, but recently after reading, you could get dual passes oil coolers. So I was looking at them and they're similar price to the Ali Sport, but Ali Sport don't get back to you in a hurry with their messages, and I have messaged them about what is the difference between a dual. I know what the difference is between a dual pass and a nun's dual pass, but Ali Sports don't actually say if there's a dual pass. It says it's got greater efficiency in cooling, which I'll definitely give them that, because I've got their full size, extra large water radiator cooler on the front of the Land Rover, and that works fantastic. So I need to speak to them about that. But my idea would be to have these up at the front end. So if I ever had to take the front end off and do stuff, clean and whatever, I could take the radiator and the cooler bits all out, all very quickly, without oil going everywhere. And the flow rate going through these is fantastic. The size that that is, and the flow rate that goes through there, these are bang on. Yeah, don't get me wrong, they're heavy and they're big. But yes, I do strip down the front end and clean and do lots of bits and bobs at least once or twice a year. So for me, save oil and all the crap and having to undo stuff and getting everything messy, this is cool. I've got it on my hydraulic pump for the power steering. I've got it on my fuel, so if you ever need to disconnect the fuel lines, I've got smaller versions, but all I do is that and disconnects. It's like, in a way, having dry brake line fittings, but these are industrial grade. Farmers use all these on their hydraulic stuff. I'm not fully into all the names and the bits of these, but the guy I get them from, JP Hydraulics up at Harworth, not JP, WP Hydraulics, he swears by them, and they make a lot of business from the farming industry around there and other companies. So, but yeah, so that was my idea with these, to have quick release, so I could easily do stuff and remove stuff without getting filthy. And I take usually a certain amount of tools along with me when I'm going away. This just helps being able to take certain things off without having to have large tools and bits and bobs. I think the biggest I go up to is a 19mm, and I could do quite a lot with the 19 all the way back down to an 8. Loads of jobs, and I don't need all the spanners in between either. So, but I should maybe do a little video on the toolkit that I always take with me, and that seems to always get me out of trouble, if I've ever got into any trouble, which is rarely. I end up using my toolkit more to help other people. So, but that's it, basically. That's the stuff. What I could show you also is the pipe that I'm using. Again, this wasn't cheap either. we're using a special flexi piping that allows you to physically bend. If this was normal PTFE pipe, I think the maximum you'd be able to get is something like that. This, you can physically bend it round to about that, and it doesn't crumple, doesn't crease. The only downside to this, maybe, is compared to the ones that they used on the original Land Rover, which was steel, that in a way absorbs and sucks heat out. This probably won't as efficient, but the flow rate and all that on them was a lot smaller. From some of the things that I read, it was better to go with a bigger flow rate. So you can't have everything 100% perfect unless you redesign the whole lot, which you don't need to. But yeah, that was the pipe that I was going to use, which was going to go off there. So basically, it would be something like this. Imagine your coupling on there, and then you would quick release like that, and that's it. So I think that gives you a bit of insight on what I've done and my plan, and hope you enjoyed, because do notice that on YouTube, there isn't many people talking about this. There's lots of stuff on forums talking about it, but nobody's actually done too many videos showing you a bit about it and what they've done. So I thought I would do the same, and I'd start doing some bits and bobs. One guy that I watch a lot of is a Canadian guy, British, moved over there whenever he did. He has loads of interesting videos all about Land Rovers, all the different ones that are out there, but most of the stuff he does is based all on the 300, 200 TDIs, 300 mostly. I've seen his videos, and that's where I've learnt a lot of my stuff from. He's fantastic. I'm trying to think of his name, what he actually does. So if I quickly just type in here, I know what it's called. It's called Britannia Restorations. So if I type in, so if I was to type in Britannia Restorations, there you go. That's the way you call it, the guy. And some of the stuff that he does, not some, most of it, all of it, is very informative and good. And for somebody that doesn't have much money and wants to try and have a go at repairing their own stuff, this is the person to watch. He really does know his stuff. So if we go onto his website, there, and if we was to, I think I could, if I was to go to videos, there you go, there's loads of, at the moment he's doing some serious, no, that was 2022 stuff. This is the guy anyway. So we quickly just show you him without the silly ads that we're always given. But that's who I get a lot of my information from, learning stuff about. Okay, so I would definitely watch some of his stuff. Definitely worth it. Right, I'm going to go because I've got stuff to do. And thank you very much for watching. See you soon.